About Ghana, everyone. This is Professor Alman Ra, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, former professor of psychology, history, and ethnic studies at Compton Community College, as well as a former city councilman on Compton College Board of Trustees and Compton Unified School District Board of Trustees, along with my co-host, Brother Joe Hembrick, a longtime educator for Compton and administrator for Compton and Linwood, the first Black football coach for Linwood Unified, head varsity football coach, and as well as a serious researcher of our history and our culture and our spirituality. And we really deeply appreciate what he brings to the table. And we want to welcome, also recognize Brother Rashaki Maskani, who provides us this platform on the Community Education Network. And the concept is each one teach one. And we're going to recognize Brother Hood, a serious computer technician that's come in tonight to listen and get some information. And the good doctor always got prescriptions. Period. You got a pocket full of prescriptions to get you healed mentally, spiritually, and physically. And we want to also recognize. I thought I saw. Well, that's about it right now. So anyway, we're gonna get started. Our host today, our presenter today is one of my best friends, Brother Asar Jubal. We did a lot of struggling while he was at Cal State Long Beach, but he's a multi-genius in many ways. Not only has he written 3 books, Black Truth, his first book, Black Revelations, his second book, and The Conspiracy of Silence, his third book. At the same time, he's continuously learning and studying. He lives in Cuba, been living in Cuba for over 20-something years. And at the same time, he's lived in Japan, and he's also lived in Africa. And I'm not talking about like went there for a month. I mean, he put years in and learned their culture, went in the bushes, learned their languages, their sounds. And so he's going to be discussing with us what topic that he feels that we need to become aware of, and that's the origin of the word Jew. And any other perspective about the war that's going on in Palestine, and any other information that he thinks that we should be aware of, because he's just a researcher by nature. I mean, he's curious. He was a former artist, electrician. I mean, when I say multi-genius, I'm not saying it lightly. And when I say this brother got multiple talents, you'll be surprised. When he put his mind to something, it's on and cracking. So we're going to get started. We want to welcome all the other people, and we'll get to you in a minute. But anyway, Brother Sar, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, Brother Ra. Hey, let me say that there's few people have passed through my life. I'm 86 now, that I have respected and loved more, and that's you. I
You must be kind, bro.
appreciate it
You must
because
be. I
I've
feel the
learned so
same.
much from you. But I don't know about you, but when we decided to talk about the origin of this term Jew, it was about 6 weeks ago, or yeah,
Yeah.
within the last 6 weeks or so, and this was before this what's going on in Palestine took place, and then when all of that went down and still going down, I was just outraged. I'm still outraged that you know, man, the first thing this president did was run over there trying to give him money and support what amounts to genocide. And not once during all his speeches and talks of him and what's the guy named Blinken and the black defense minister, whatever his name is, I forgot his name, Austin, I think. Not once have I heard one of them even mention the word peace. It it's not in their vocabulary, it seems like. One of the things we have to understand is that the right now the presidency of the United States is controlled by the military industrial complex, which the same thing that Eisenhower warned about when he did his last speech as president was to warn the country that this combination of military with arms makers and defense contractors and all of that were taken over. And now we see the fruits of it because the kind of system that we have is not a democracy at all, first of all. But the kind of system that we have is so reliant on war. They don't care to win a war. They haven't won a war since way back in the 40s. They haven't won a war, but they need to have war because it brings in through the taxpayers' money, brings huge returns to the military uh, contractors and defense contractors that run this country. And contribute. It doesn't matter whether you Democratic or Republican. They contribute heavily to both sides and control the idea of war, constant war going on somewhere. And they don't even try to win. Look at the U.S. spent 20 some years, I think it was, in Afghanistan. They didn't try to win the war. They just wanted to continue it so that they could keep sending arms and troops and thereby once they depleted them, refill them. And then these defense contractors, these aircraft makers and shipbuilders and tanks, all of this manufacturers, they all benefit from that. And it's all being paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. And they don't understand. Look, the budget, the budget of the U.S., about more than $800 billion goes into the military. There's no returns on the military. It's not like you're planting 800 billion acres of farmland and you get food and you can eat. You don't get nothing back for that. You understand? So this is the kind of mentality that we see. And then when we saw the Israeli response to ethnic cleansing and just literally trying to create genocide against the Palestinian people who are natural. This is their natural homes. It has always been their natural home. To see these Israelis go in there and just indiscriminately bomb and bomb and bomb, it's just outrageous to me. It's outrageous that this country would support that. Not just this country, all of Western Europe that supporting it, even though they got demonstrations from all over every major city in Europe and the US against it. They don't listen to them because the control of the activities in the United States is controlled by this military industrial complex. So I'm outraged. And then not only by what's occurring, but for other reasons too, because the methods that the Israelis are using right now, even as we speak, is the same methods that were used by these European colonists as they colonized the entire world. All of these white countries, whether from France, Spain, Italy, Germany, the United Kingdom, United States, all of them, which are supporting these Israelis. This is exactly the way they invaded all of the countries of color in the world. Everywhere you look, they'd go in, establish their little explorers would go in and establish a little trading post, trade few trinkets, and then pretty soon they would open up a trading post. Then they'd bring in missionaries. Then the next thing you know, they'd bring in troops to guard the goods, or so to speak. And then before you know it, the troops are attacking the people and setting the people against one another in order to take control And then pretty soon they spread more and more, taking more and more land, more and more control over the people, their culture, their habits. And how did they look at these people? They called them savages. That's us, savages, heathen, uncivilized, unchristianized, all of these terms that they use uh, because they saw us, because of our color, as being lesser than them. White supremacy. That's all it was. And that's all it is today in Palestine. Who are these Israelis? Every last one of them's come from Europe. They're all Europeans. After World War II, Hitler, the Nazis tried to exterminate them and then forced them at the end of the war, sent them to no, I don't want to get into too many details, but back in 1916, 16 or 17, the British, the Western Allies, were losing the war. It was the danger of that war against Germany, Austria, Hungary, that group of being taken over, of them losing that war. And so they needed money. Who did they go to? They went to the Jewish bankers in both the United Kingdom and the United States to borrow money to put into the war, and at the same time to pull the Americans in so that they can win the war. And in exchange for that money from these Jewish, the Rothschild banks, in exchange for that loan, they promised the Jews, the so-called Jews, that they would give them a homeland in Palestine. That was the agreement. Then after the war, they took the monies, they took Germany, all their colonies, and they took the rule by what had been Turkey. Turkey had control over all of the Arabian Peninsula. They took that. Turkey was a part of the opposition against the West in World War I. And they took their lands and they gave it to England and France, split it up between them as a mandate over the Arabian Peninsula. And then once the British took control, they started importing or bringing the Jews in from Europe. And then, meanwhile, Germany that was paying for it all of the reparations and the repayments that the British had to make to the Jewish bankers, the Rothschild banks, had to come from Germany's money. So Germany was becoming poorer and poorer and poorer and more desperate. And by 1931, they owed more money in war reparations than they did in 1918. So what did they do in desperation? They turned to who? Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler was blaming the Jews, the Jewish bankers, the people who controlled all of Germany, who still had the money, who had gone into cahoots with the British and the French and the Americans. And now they were calling Hitler, who had been raving about this since the end of the World War I, was called in to take control of the government, to save Germany, to bring back the pride, I guess you could call it, to Germany. So he was called in, and as he came in, he did what you would see Donald Trump do if he come in, changed the system whereby it went from a democracy to an autocracy, where he was in control. And then you had that buildup of the Nazis. And the first thing they did is started attacking their neighbors and started exterminating the Jews to pay them back, to rid the world, as Hitler wanted, of all of these Jews. And it wasn't just Germany and the Nazis alone. This was all over Europe. The French were just as bad almost. The Russians, even though they're being attacked, was against the Jews, and on and on. When you go through all of those countries, were complicit in the extermination attempt by the Nazis against them. So at the end of World War II, they decided to, and they formed the United Nations, and they decided to award the the land of Palestine to split it up between the people who, the native people who are already there, to the Jews, which made up, I don't know the exact percentage, it was like 8 to 11% of the population at the time. This is in 1946. And they decided to give it to them. They didn't ask the Palestinians. The Palestinians didn't have, they weren't not a nation. They were still under British control. So they didn't have a say-so in their own destiny. It was decided by England, France, the United States, Germany, all of these white European countries decided to impose this. And Saudi Arabia also voted to impose it. Russia, because they had so many Jews, they wanted them out. So they signed on to it. And this is how the state of Israel was formed. Nobody asked the Palestinians. The Palestinians were completely against it. And yet they had to give up lands that to these people, the Zionist Hebrews. And by the way, let me mention that Zionism didn't begin with the Hebrews. It began with Christian Zionists. The Christians were the ones who were the main ones. They, in fact, they had formed crusades against Jerusalem, which was Palestinian or Arab at the time, and still is, should be. But they were the ones who formed the whole notion of Zionism as this being the promised land, a holy land, based on the Old Testament of the Bible, which after the Nicene Council, when Christianity was accepted in Rome as the official religion, this was in about 325 AD, with Constantine conquered Rome and then convened this council of all of the various religious elements in the empire, and then imposed Christianity, which claimed this Jesus hoax as part of not as part, as the centerpiece for a whole religion. And at the same time, they outlawed all other religions. Well, what were all the other religions? There were us. All the religions of people of color in the world at that time were the enemy, the Gnostics, they call us. Now, let me show you. This is, I don't know if you can see this. You can see that all right? These symbols right here?
Yeah.
Okay, these was a hieroglyphic symbol which is pronounced U, and U is spelled IU according to Budge, one of the interpreters, so-called interpreter of the hieroglyphs, and it meant to come or to go, and it was a title for the sun, which is constantly coming and going. Thank goodness. And so now, this term was applied to all the people who were nature worshipers in the world. And all the people who were nature worshipers, the top deity in their religion was the sun, the element of the sun, because, all the world believed that the sun was the law of nature, the law of the earth, and that to respect and follow it and to deify it as they did and write metaphorical stories about it became the was not widespread. It was in the entire world. So the idea of a historic savior or Jesus came about when Augustus Caesar died. He was the second ruler of the Roman Empire after Julius Caesar. He died in AD 12 or 13. Then after that time, his followers wanted to deify him, to claim that he was the savior, in fact, the Messiah, even though all of this stuff were titles for the son and were non-historical, non-human. They still wanted to claim this, and nobody accepted it because they all believed they were sun worshipers. They believed in nature. They didn't believe in no historical person as being, a savior. But anyway, that's how it began. The idea, concept began there. So these followers of Augustus kept sending envoys to Jerusalem trying to get the Jews, who were us at the time, to convert over to this historical invention, creation of Jesus. And they refused. The whole world refused. So then this conflict erupted, not only verbal conflict, but actual fighting and assassinations, etc., etc. And over the next 300 years, the Roman Empire was in chaos, fighting between these uh, ancient holidays which celebrated nature and the sun, and the black people who celebrated the same thing. And now you had these occultists, I call them, who were trying to elevate the idea of a historical savior as the Messiah. So that you had this big conflict that took place in Rome during those first 3 centuries of the Christian era. And when the reason Constantine went into Rome was to establish order. That was his reason for invading Rome with an army. He took it over, he became emperor. Within 10 years, he convened the Council of Nicaea, and then at that point, they outlawed, I should say, all other religions except Christianity. All other religions were punishable. The ultimate punishment was death if you practice it. And they began this purging of eunostics from that time on, all the way up through that period you call the Dark Ages. And it's still going on, as we see with the Israelis trying to exterminate the Palestinians and kick them off their lands. This is the same method that was used here in the Americas to wipe out the native population, where they killed off all of the people from all parts of the country and then rounded up the survivors and drove them off into what they call reservations. A lot of them went to the Oklahoma Territory, which was then known as the Indian Territory. Oklahoma they took the Seminole people from Florida. They took, oh man, I can't remember. I talk about it in the book, but they shipped them, marched them from wherever they were located in the United States, and sent them to the Oklahoma Territory, Indian reservations. The rest of them they put on reservations and put them under government control. The government had to feed them and house them, et cetera, and just took all their land from them. In that same period of time, they murdered the no, just from the time that Columbus arrived here in 1492, by 1500, or excuse me, 1600, they had killed off 45 million native people, Aboriginal people in the Americas. Just exterminated them, took their lands, and started, cutting down the trees and building their cities and forts and military incursions. And just same method that was used then is being used today in Palestine, where the Israelis have gone in. Look at a map of Israel in 1947 or whenever it was established, and see the amount of land that they controlled compared to what they control today. It's just flipped. the Palestinian peoples who made up like 90% of the population at that time have now been driven into exile into other countries. They've been crowded into little enclaves like the Gaza Strip, and then these people are attacking them. Now, let's get down to this Jew. The word Jew was a variation of you, as I showed you. It has various pronunciations because it's vowels. And then the only time it incorporates a consonant is when you take into consideration that I-U, the I in U is interchangeable with the letter J. So I and J, that's why when you write a J, you put a dot at the top of it, because they were at one time the same exact letter. Now,
Jubal.
Oh yeah, Rashiki.
Yeah, tell them to hold it up higher.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A little bit higher.
Okay. The I in U interchanges with the letter J. And that's why you see the J, when you write the small J with a dot on top of it, it was evolved from the letter I. And J interchanges with letters G, K, C, and Q, because they all have, generally speaking, the same pronunciation. So a lot of terms, because of that, evolved from this set of words, which means to come and to go. Now, if you, the people who believed in nature, the sun worshipers, the nature worshipers, the Black people, the people of color all around the world, were generally called Gnostics. You meaning the ones who know, or excuse me, Gnostic meaning the ones who know, and you meaning these were the people who believed in nature, the you. That was the main term to describe nature, or one of the main terms to describe nature. And there were so many of them, it was so widely used that people identified each other as you. So this is how the word you, as in you and me, came to be, because people identified each other as you, you meaning you believed in this religion of nature. It was all over the world. And people don't know this origin because the dictionaries, all the Western dictionaries, have tried to disconnect themselves from Africa. This guy who interpreted the hieroglyphs, this Wallace Budge from England, was a graduate of some Hebrew university in England. And he was the one who was in charge of all the Egyptian artifacts. And so and plus he was a devout Christian on top of that. So all of the interpreters, whether they came from Austria or Russia or England or France or any part of Europe, were all Christians, number one. They were all white, number two, or maybe that should be number one. And they were all males. There were no females. There was no person of color. So they were biased in their interpretation and their opinion into what they saw. But the thing that gets over, revealed this conspiracy, was that they were not united. The researchers in Austria and Germany and England and France were, they were doing their own research individually. So they were trying to one up each other and trying to be as accurate as possible until they finally realized that by being accurate, they were revealing the origins of Christianity, and that those origins were nothing but Egyptian mythology, African stories told in metaphor, which related the entire story of Jesus, a person who never existed, It might as well be Superman or Clark Kent, as I've said many times on many occasions. That's what it was. And also this purge against these Jews, which were us, and mind you, the Jews, the purge against the Gnostics was got to the extent to where they were burned at the stake. This precipitated what they call the Dark Ages, where there was no knowledge in the world, because the people who had knowledge was us. So they were exterminated as much as possible. And the Hebrews were people who had been Jews, a part of that, but in order to survive, altered their story, and it was acceptable. This was all done in Rome. Rome was the seat of the Catholic religion. So the Hebrews agreed to create a narrative based on the same mythology of the ancient Egyptian mythology, that in which they claim that God gave, I think it was Abraham, the promised land. Come on. I mean, think about that. Really consider that, what they're saying. This is the justification that these modern Israelis have for being in Palestine today. This is what they use. Over the years, I've asked several associates that I've run into, Hebrews. I said, what does the word Jew mean? Where does it come from? And inevitably, they would always revert back to the Old Testament of the Bible. The Old Testament of the Bible was rewritten. It was based on mythology, Egyptian mythology, was rewritten by the Hebrew sect sometime in the years after the Catholic Church was established. They did it to survive, because had they remained as a part of the nature worshipers, they would have been exterminated like all the other Gnostics were. So they changed the narrative. And then they took up a new name, Hebrew. Then they introduced a new script called Hebrew, and brought that into and tried to claim that these were ancient writings. But there's no document written in ancient Hebrew before the Middle Ages. It never existed. So you can see how they did that maybe as a survival technique. But this was acceptable to the Catholic Church for this reason. They needed a genealogy for Jesus. Jesus was invented. So they needed to provide what do you mean? If the guy existed, you had to have a mom and a daddy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and grandparents and on back. So this provided them with the genealogy, So I used to have a guy on one of the ships I was on when I was in the Navy. He used to say, wasn't it odd of God to choose the Jews? And then under that, it was said, even more odd are those who choose a Jewish God, but not the Jews. So this was the mentality all during the Middle or so-called Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, that permeated the entire Roman Catholic Empire. It was so, people were not allowed to read anything. They were not allowed to practice science in any form. They had the Inquisition, whereby the inquisitors could come and claim that anybody was practicing what they call witchcraft, or they had all kinds of names for it. Anybody that was not a Catholic Christian was considered the enemy and was considered Gnostic, and that was us. And now, by the time the 1600, the time of Columbus came out and they started exploring, it was all based on Marco Polo, who had visited India and China, and then came back with all of these fantastic stories. And that started the exploration by the Europeans going out into the world. And in 1492 is when Columbus came. He wasn't going to the Americas, he was going to India. And when he got there, he named the people that were there Indians. You know, that's where that word came from. So anyway, this is how this is the beginning of the real alien attitude of the Europeans was in 1492 with the discovery of the Americas by Columbus. They came in and look, they set up little tiny trading post colonies. Next thing you know, they got a few soldiers to protect it. Next thing you know, the few soldiers is a fortress. Next thing you know, they're taking over the land and more and more and more and more and more, setting this native people to fight this native people, arming both sides and instigating, you know, signifying monkeys, literally setting fire to the and taking over the lands. So, you know, the great so-called leaders of America, George Washington was a landowner. So was Jefferson. And matter of fact, I forget the exact number, but all the signers of the Declaration of Independence, most of them were slave owners. You know, they were planters, landowners. You know, how did they get that land? Whose land was it? All right, that's another story. So to get back to Jew.
Okay, go ahead. And
the
then we're
term
going to ask some questions.
Interchanges with these four, and because the I and the J are the same, I believe, and I can't prove it right now, but that even Budge, when he sat down to interpret this, saw that this term was Jew. But instead, he called it you, because all of his interpretations do everything possible to distance and separate Africa from Europe. Everything. I mean, if you read his interpretation of the hieroglyphs, you would think it was an alien language, had no connection to anybody. I mean, really, it's some of the terminologies and pronunciation they did. So I read the preface of his dictionary and how they had guessed at what this might mean and what that was and what this symbol meant. They didn't know. They went in with a huge bias to begin with. You know, they were, as I mentioned, white, Christian, males, and they were formed their so-called Egyptology in the first place just to find Christian sites to prove the Bible was true. And what they found was the very opposite. So once they discovered it, they went mute. They wanted to, you know, erase it, ignore it, omit it, you know, never mention it. Thus you have a conspiracy of silence, you know, which is what they employ even today. These Jews are the so-called Jews stole this name from us as a people. They took it because it was not a ethnic word at all. It didn't it didn't refer to any ethnicity. It was based on the religion itself, which was worldwide at the time, all around the world. And the people who lived in Europe, as the purge against Gnosticism kept increasing, especially during the Inquisition and the Dark Ages, in order to survive, took up the idea of Hebrewism because it offered a genealogy for the Jesus, which the Christian church needed. The Catholics needed that genealogy to claim that the story was true, you know, Jesus was a Jew, in other words. And so this is why they let them live. It's the only reasons. During the, I think it's the 10th century or 11th century, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, they mounted crusade after crusade, these Catholics, invading where? In Palestine, Jerusalem, and they lost it. Sometimes they'd take it over for a while, and then the Arabs would come and retake it. You see? So all of this time was because of the writings in the Old Testament, which were claiming that the land had been promised to them, had been promised to Abraham by God. This is this is
Jubal,
nothing but a folk tale, you know?
Jubal,
Yes.
we're going to go around and see if any questions
Okay.
and
Great.
that people have. And we want to thank you for the presentation. Rose was on, Dr. Allen, and she left. And then I think Crystal Jackson. Crystal, I don't know if you remember her, but she was one of Rose's best friends. I think she's still on. Is that you, Crystal? You're on mute. Okay, that's okay. Let's go ahead on. We're going to start off with.
I am on.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm just listening. I don't have a question right now.
Okay, Crystal.
Thank you.
No caller. All right. Let's go here. Go around. We're going to start with. What about Iffy? Is that Iffy Lee?
That's Professor J.I.E.
Okay. Do you have any questions? She's dealing with the baby. We'll come back.
No, thank you. I don't have any questions, but no, let me stop. I do have a question. You talked about the coming of Constantine and the Nicene Conference. And I think that you might have alluded to the concept of white supremacy being really the rationale for doing what they did at that Nicene Conference. But I'm curious if there's any other calls for the attack on the Gnostics. Was it a matter of them just having another ideology that was in conflict of those that were in power? But what was the maybe justifications for the attack on the Gnostics? Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Well, I would say, look, if this guy, this cult leader, Trump, was to take power in the U.S. in the next election, which could happen, he would immediately move to dissolve democracy, the Constitution, and establish an autocracy. This is the same thing Constantine did. And in order to achieve that, he had to recognize that the reason he had to invade Rome was because of this religious turmoil that was existing at that time between the early followers of Augustus Caesar, who wanted to say that he was the savior, the Messiah, and the Jews who were denouncing it and saying that that's not true. We believe in the Son. If you can find information on the holidays that were celebrated in the Roman and Greek empires long before Christianity ever existed, you'd see some of this played out. For example, in the term, look it up if you will, Sol Invictus, S-O-L, and then Invictus, which was representing the sun. It was also Natalus Invictus, Natilus Invictus, which was the birth of the sun. This day of celebrating all over Rome was sun worship. And the date that they chose as the Natalus, or the birthday, was the 25th of December. Doesn't that mean right there alone gives you an indication of how they converted the Gnostic writings in ancient Egypt and throughout the Gnostic communities all across the Roman Empire, converted it or attempted to convert it into history. They in order to attract any kind of followers, they had to concede that the holidays, which were already being celebrated and practiced, were incorporated into the narrative that this was a historical character named Jesus. You see, if you revert back to these legs, moving, which means you see over here you have Ye, and Ye is also pronounced J-E-U, and it in some Latino languages it's called He, and E, the letter I-E, which meant to come or to go, in this case to go, and Su that follows it, Su means the child or the seed. That's where that comes from. Yesu means the child that was coming to be born. You understand? This was practiced uh, uh, before Easter, and it was the name that was given to the son in metaphor, mind you. This is not non-historical. It to the son was giving that name on the 25th of December every year. It was a child that had been born as far as the people who lived in the northern hemisphere were concerned, because the sun on the 22nd of December had crossed the equator. So now it was moving to the north and moving into spring. And so it became the coming child, the child that was to be born on the 25th of March, the first day of spring, the 22nd of March, actually. So this was the reason, one of the many reasons that Constantine, in order to find to consolidate power in the empire, had to assume and incorporate the eunostic celebrations, which were already popular throughout the empire, incorporate them into the religious, the historical Jesus narrative, in order to win over people, or to to bring them aboard. As it's like, oh man, I don't know how you would compare it. It's like Trump, if he becomes president again, I'm sure would declare that January the 6th be a national holiday. That's the day of the insurrection, the attack on the Capitol. But this is the kind of attitude that was used by
Brother Jubal. Let me just
yes,
say this. The same way America knocked off the Indians. The Indians were not Christians.
right.
You understand, this whole continent was full of Native Americans that had their own spirituality, different ones. Mm-hmm. And now you don't even think about that. No. You know, they converted this into their concept of a religion. But Joe Hembrick be bringing this up all the time. They were drinking the Kool-Aid. Let me get to another person. Shawara. Shai. Are you there?
Brother Chawara.
Brother Shawara. Okay. What about Brother Diaz?
I'm here, Chawara.
Okay, Brother Chawara. You have any questions?
Yeah. I got a question jumped in there. Okay, the first question is, could you, if you have any understanding of or take on the protocols of the Elders of Zion, if you've heard of that by Victor Marsden, that writing that was translated by Victor Marsden, we gave a series of protocols.
I apologize. I'm not familiar with that. I apologize. I'd love to love to see it.
Yes, it's called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion by Victor Marsden. Okay, it's very interesting. Because it relates to everything that you're saying and everything also that's going on in today's Palestine, in conjunction with the state of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, now another question I have for you is, are there any practicing eunostics in existence today?
Well, sure. Any place where you see people have a religion is not Christianity, then that's what's going on. The Hindus, the Chinese, now, man, they might have, excuse me, they might have wandered away from the central of the Gnostic religion, because Egypt has long since fallen. But and so these people have been disconnected from the source or the center, Africa. But still, they don't believe in no historical. I mean, the Christians, white European Christians, are the only one who believe in some historical savior. And it's all, you know, if
Buddhism and Hinduism.
Folk story. It's not even a good folk story, really. These people who believe in this believe in it because, number one, they are mutations. They were back in 1500 BC, when there was a collision of some meteors or with the Earth, and it created a change in the Earth's rotation or whatever, declination, or whatever, to the point to where the weather patterns in Europe changed and it froze. And the people were unable, it froze for like decades, you know, maybe centuries. Nobody knows exactly. They called it Fimbul, F-I-M-B-U-L, look it up, Fimbul winter in Europe, to whereby the villagers, the little towns, could not communicate. It was dangerous to walk 10, 15, 20 miles or kilometers to the next town. So they end up inbreeding. It became, you know, the inner social activities ceased, and they were confined to the areas where people were lived in their towns or whatever they lived in their huts. And as a result of that, it led to inbreeding between brother and sister, father, daughter, etc., etc. And that in turn led to the loss of melanin, the damaging of the chromosomes, to the point to where the melanin color was lost. Okay. Now, it also led to them becoming, changing from being a matriarchal people, whereby the woman had control because she was the one who, you know, farmed the lands closest, right outside the door of the house. You know, they built their fields and farms. But once the weather changed like that, they couldn't rely on vegetation. So the men had to go out to hunt. They became hunters, and they changed. They because they now were the family providers, they became the breadwinners, so to speak. The woman literally became nothing. She was just there as a sexual object to be used to procreate children, hopefully male children. And this is why they became patrilineal. Look, these are people who, until what, 100 years ago, they didn't, in this country, didn't even allow their women to vote. They're in the same in Europe. They didn't allow them to vote. They were patriarchal, patrilineal, however you want to say it, people, because that they were required to go out and hunt to go on the hunt for meat, and to get the goats who could eat the little tiny moss that grows even under the snow, and the sheep and the mountain goats, the deer, etc., the antelopes, the caribou, etc. That became their source of sustenance. And eventually over time, they took power. Even in Rome in the early days, the male had the power of life or death over his wife. Don't let a woman be caught in an adulterous act. The man could kill her legally and would not be charged for it. You know, he could sell. At that time, they had indentured servitude as well as slavery in ancient Rome. Even then, the male, the family male head had the total power. And it's amazing when you know, analyze it and break it down to these little things. These people who call themselves Jews, who previously called themselves Hebrews, you ask them, if you have some friends, I had many a Jewish friend growing up, you ask them, what does that word mean, where it comes from? And I guarantee you they'll all revert to the source as the Old Testament of the Bible. Now,
Right.
if you read the story and consider it, man, you got to be kidding. It's not even a good folks tale. And yet, this is what people are basing the idea that this land, Israel's totally illegitimate because they're based it on the Old Testament. Are you kidding me? That's their reason for being there. That's their reason for for wanting the West Bank, which they call Samaria or whatever they called it, from biblical narratives. And they, every time you raise a voice against them, they say, "Oh, you're being anti-Semitic." What does Semitic mean? Do you know what a Semite is? A Semite is supposed to be a descendant of the son of Noah. Get out of here. Noah's Ark? Do you believe that? Come on.
All right.
Think about that for a moment.
All right, Jubal, we gotta get to some more people. The good doctor, you have any questions?
No, all good information. Lots of history. Just sad what's going on. Nothing's going to change. You know, only thing I just see, man, is that, you know, Israel, these guys are pushing it to the edge. They're seeing how far they can go, and nobody's doing nothing. You know, all this talk is nothing. Nobody's stopping them. They're seeing how far they can go. And, you know, I got my Palestinian neighbors, you know, here I talk to all the time, and they're down and out about it, man. But hey, you know, they're gonna wipe them all out, man, and nobody's gonna do nothing. Nobody's standing up now that can go toe to toe with America and its allies. So, hey, nothing's gonna change, man. They're gonna take over that land. And hey, Trump's gonna get back in office, and man, I love it. Yeah, I'm just sitting back and eating popcorn, man. Like I said last time, I hope everybody just blow each other up, man, and just, you know, we need a big reset. If we can just start WW3 and blow everybody up, and let's see who's standing, man. Let's see who's left. That's my thing.
But Doc, there are demonstrations all over the world.
Yeah, what demonstrations going to do? What are demonstrations going to do?
It does a lot. It does a lot.
Nothing.
But they demonstrated for George Floyd too. But
how many more brothers got killed by cops right after that?
It doesn't matter about that. Resistance is the only answer to the struggle. But
I'd rather have a bomb than resistance.
Okay.
Well, you know, there was no demonstrations when they were wiping out the Native Americans. Yeah, period. Nobody was marching and demonstrating. There was no demonstrations against Hitler. There was no demonstrations, not in Americans. Come on, how many Jews lived in America during World War II? Almost 6, 7, 10 million, I don't know. Did they demonstrate? Did you see them get out marching? No. So at least had they done so then, and like they're doing now, at least you're doing something. I don't know about you, but I'm really outraged. I want to tell every Black person that voted for Joe Biden, forget it. This guy is, come on. This is the same methods that they deployed all over Africa, all over Asia. Little tiny Europe, which is no bigger than the one country in Africa. Them coming from Holland. Holland is barely big as New York City. Belgian, Belgian Congo. You've heard of these terms. French Indochina. My good French West Africa. In Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger, they kicked the French out, because they're finally coming to their senses. You know, in Haiti, French colonized, refused to invade them in agreement that Haiti would pay them reparations for the land that had been taken from the slave owners. Can you imagine that? And they're still paying it up to this day. This is just the way it is. So people have to demonstrate. They have to get out and say, look, you might not, you might want to send our money over there to support these Israelis and these Ukrainians or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, is that next time around, you ain't going to be in office. And this is what these politicians had got to listen to. These Jews have no reason, no legitimate reason for existing as first of all, they're not even an ethnic group. That's not an ethnicity. It was a religion. That's how it became so widespread, and that you find the Jews in Ethiopia and Austria and Russia and wherever they are in the world, because it was a religion. Even in Peru, the Huaco named themselves Huaco means the coming spirit, the spirit of nature. That the spirit that dominates nature. They named themselves after the same you. And the Hindu, the beginning with HI is the same as HU because all the vowels interchange. They were religious, believing in the spiritual nature, the spiritual afterlife that comes with transition, with death, as you call it. That's what comes. This is the way it is. This is what our people believed in, and still most of them believe in. But these Europeans, look who's supporting Israel. Look at all of these so-called Israelites. Who are they? They from the track where they come from. All of them come out of the Great Britain, England, Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, Russia, France, from the United States, Canada. And none of them have no connection to the Palestine at all. Okay. And they just take over that land.
All right, we gotta get a couple more questions in before we let you go, Jubal. Brother DX.
Yeah, peace and blessings.
Peace.
Yeah, man, I'm really grateful here, Dr. Jubal, that you come on and explain this to us from a historical perspective, giving us this information. Really and truly, you kind of like just confirm some things for me, just kind of connecting a few of the dots. One of the things like you was talking about, like the Jews, even the Bible talk about the Jews. There's a scripture in Revelations, I think it's Revelations 3:9. It says, like, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but are liars. Behold, I will make them come to worship before your feet, and know that I have loved you. So in a sense, it's already written that there will be that deception. And when they say like the God of Satan, the interesting thing that you had mentioned before was about how they like the sun worshipers. So as worshiping the sun, they worship Saturn. That's where they get Satan from. And if you look at most of the Jewish emblems, they all have like the Saturn emblem in some regard, or it'll be the constellation, or they'll have like their name and then a circle around it, like as a logo representing their satanic energy. Even how they call our government a demonocracy, like a democracy is a demonocracy. You know what I mean? And like we've been ruled by like these negative forces, and even to the consent that the concept behind everything that is structured by the Gnostics is based on sun worship. So what they took is like you got 12 disciples, so that's how 12 zodiacs. You got 12 other children of Israel, which is the 12 zodiacs, the children of Israel, and then it just brings about the whole falsehood behind those stories are not historical because you can't find them nowhere else in history but like the Bible and certain religious books. But outside of that, the writings of certain historians from then don't mention anything about some of these activities and things that were going. So thank you very much for, you know, just elaborating. And I would like you to just talk a little bit about, just to touch on, because like the fact that the Germans lost the war. So why was it necessary? Why they just didn't send the Jews back home? If they lost the war, like Hitler was gone, why they just didn't send them back home?
I don't understand that question. Send them back home. Who
Like,
they
like
you talking
the
about?
Jewish settlement, because Hitler was killing them all, right? So they
Yeah.
made the settlement over there in Palestine,
The
right?
Jews, listen to me. The
So
Jews
like
in Germany,
you just
the
send them home.
Jews.
Just go home now. Y'all can go back home to y'all where y'all came from. So because
All
y'all
right,
Hitler,
listen to
you
me.
know,
Jews was, first of all, was not an ethnicity. It was a religion, a religious movement. It was all over the world. The Jews, the so-called Jews today, are Germans. The ones who come from Germany are Germans. They just happen to have that Gnostic religion. The ones who come from Russia are Russians who just happen to have learned the Gnostic religion. Gnosticism was all over the world, including all of the Roman Empire. Indeed, most of the incursions into Rome after Christianity was established were by Gnostics attacking Rome, you know, because they had renounced and they totally renounced this idea of some historical Jesus. The Jews that you see, the Zionists that you see today in Israel, are all from Europe. Look at them. The ones who came out of Ethiopia trying to get a piece of the so-called promised land are being discriminated against in Israel today because they're black. So it's
right.
about
I'm trying to.
black. It's about black and white. And let me add this one other note. This whole narrative in Christianity, whether it comes from the Old Testament or the New Testament, is nothing but altered Egyptian, African mythology. That's all it
Absolutely.
is. They
We
altered it.
got
They
that.
couldn't even change the names of the deities. They couldn't change the dates of the celebrations from the Gnostics. They couldn't. They couldn't. They weren't that creative. So what they did is they said, hey, Christianity is the religion. If you don't like it, boom. And they started killing them. And from 300 uh, after Nicaea all the way up till today, as we see, they're still doing the same thing, trying to
So
destroy anybody who was against. And one other note, brother, I appreciate the information, but one other note I got to add. Anybody today who claims to be a Christian or a Jew, who claims this today, who claims the Bible as authentic, as what they believe in, is supporting white supremacy. Because who else are these Christians except white supremacists? They are anti-nature. Everywhere Christianity has gone, they've destroyed nature, building dams and converting rivers and killing off the animals and bringing in new animals, planting them, cutting down the forest. And come on, everything they're doing is against nature. And people who claim to be Christians, that they are supporting white supremacy, period. That's all it is. This thing in Israel today is nothing but white supremacy.
All right.
All of these damn the so-called Jews are nothing but a bunch of Zionist Europeans who were sent there by the Great Britain, United States, France. It's for them. It's a base in oil-rich Arabia. It's
okay,
a
so
base,
what I'm
military
trying
base.
what I'm trying to get you to talk about here a little bit is out of Germany during the Hitler, when he was doing his whole cleansing, his ethnic cleansing, who was he killing? Who was
He's
being
killing
murdered
his
and
own
slaughtered?
people.
Like,
My brother.
was
First of all,
was these, that's what I'm
it
saying. Like,
wasn't.
was these Gnostics
First of
or
all,
were these Jews? Who was he
first of
killing?
all,
Gnostics?
Brother, please listen. It wasn't ethnic cleansing. It wasn't about an ethnicity. Jews are not an ethnicity. You understand that point?
Right.
It was
I
a
got that.
religion. It was
I
a
got that
religion
part.
movement.
I
The
totally get
reason
this. So
it
who was
came to
killing?
be so widespread in the world is because it was a religion that believed in nature. That's what the word, the
So
term
who
means.
was Hitler killing? Who was he
He was
running out
killing
of
his
Germany?
own people who happened to accept that religion. That's who he's killing. This
So
is
I'm
not an
saying
ethnicity.
after Hitler was. So I'm saying
When they
after the war, why didn't
let
those
me
people get to go
okay,
back
let me
home?
make this point. Let me make this point
Why
so
didn't they go back to
we're
Germany?
clear about it.
Right.
The
That's all I'm trying
reason
to figure out
when
on
they
a scale.
started rounding up the Jews to send them off to the camps, the first thing they had to do was make them wear a armband with a
The
Star
typo
of
symbol.
David imposed on it
Right,
to
right, right.
identify them as Jews. Why? Because they were the same ethnicity as the people that were killing them. The same people. There was no different. They were born in Germany. Their whole history, well, if it was in Germany, was from Germany, wherever they were, whether it was in Russia, in
Right.
France,
That's what I
and,
know.
and
That's what
most
I'm
of
saying.
those governments
So
cooperated.
what's
Most of
the
those
what's the
governments,
logistics behind them not going home? Why what
what
you know what I'm
home?
saying? Like
What
if they was
home?
there and then Hitler lost the war, why didn't the Jews or the Gnostics just go back to Germany? Like,
That's
you know,
what they've done. Why you think there's Israel today? That's what they are.
but they lost the
They
war. Like
made the agreement.
Hitler
They
lost
made
the
the
war.
agreement.
You wouldn't need an
Germany
Israel. It
lost
had
the
to be some
war.
other strategic point or something else going on. Like it was all pre-planned in the first place. Like that was
I
the
don't.
whole point, was to create something that has to be another strategic level that they was thinking about other than just a war. You know what I mean? Like for them to
Well,
be
I don't
killing their
know,
own
brother.
people and
Maybe
then
you
put
wasn't
a
listening to the
settlement and
first
they
part of
actually
this
won.
presentation, but I mentioned the fact back in 1916, the Zionists under I forget the names, don't know, made an agreement with the British foreign minister, I believe, who Balfour his name was, that in exchange for monetary support from the Jewish bankers, that they would give them a homeland. You understand? And that homeland happened to be Israel. First, they considered going to Uganda or Argentina too. These were
Okay, all
considerations.
right, that
But
makes sense.
finally, they determined to go to Palestine.
GX and Jubal, we got to get to Brother Hembrick and
Okay.
And Hood.
and Rasaki.
Hood.
Hood, Brother Hood. Is he still here?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, what's up? Greetings, brother.
Greetings. Okay, we go with Brother Hood first, and then Joe. He'll close it out. And Rasaki. Go ahead,
All right.
Brother Hood.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jubal. Heavyweight stuff today. I definitely read your book and appreciate you taking the time out to kind of go over some of this ancient history. And I have a question and a comment. I do think I wanted to kind of touch on what you mentioned about ancient Rome. When you mentioned what was happening during the time, a lot of killing going on when they were coming up with the first version of what was going to be the Bible. Right. And this is what you consider the Dark Ages. And so during that period, they were killing a lot of Gnostics. Would you say that's?
Say that again?
You said they were killing a lot of Gnostics. The Dark Ages.
Gnostics, yes.
Gnostics, yeah. And so during that time, I mean, is that the time during Septimus Severus or one of the Roman leaders that was killing the Christians? Because I remember during that time. Is that before?
I believe it. I'm sure it was during that time, but the actual dispute between the historiographers, the people who created this idea of a historic savior of the world, began after the death of the Augustus Caesar. in 12 AD. He died, and his followers, like cultists do, wanted to elevate him to the status of Messiah, not understanding that the Messiah was a name given to the sun as it changed each time it changed the constellation behind the sun. You know,
Okay. Okay.
whenever the equinox rotates every 26,000 years, 12 constellations it passes through. So each time the sun entered a new constellation, it was called the Messiah, the ever-coming Savior.
Okay. And so during this time, this is when they were killing a lot of Gnostics. So anybody, there was a battle between
They started the killing of the Gnostics. And I should say they started fighting the Gnostics in the first century.
First century. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
is that what Rome, like, I think they have something in Rome at they call it the catacombs, like the bone. They have it's like a tour you could
the
take in Rome.
catacombs are the tombs that the Gnostics built where they buried their dead. The Gnosticism was widespread and strong in Rome. You got to understand that. So it was too in Greece, and it was too in Egypt, of course. But the reason you had this turmoil and differences, excuse me, of opinion is because Egypt had fallen in 1500 BC with the catastrophe of the meteor shower that hit the earth and caused change all around the earth. But that's the downfall of Egypt. And it took about 1,000 years before these mutations, who were created as a result of that down at the meteor shower, the mutations to the white people to come up with this idea of a historical savior or Messiah. So they had lost touch virtually with the center of learning, which was Egypt, because Egypt had fallen after that 1,500 years before the time of Augustus. So I hope I'm clear on that.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Severus Septimus, I'm not sure about the man. When it comes to numbers, Rock can tell you, I'm you know.
No, I appreciate it.
I don't recall him. That's why I wrote the book, so I can put everything down, make sure I had it right.
Yeah. You
when
definitely
it comes to talking, I can't remember names and numbers that well. But
yeah, well, you put it home for me because you connected the dots with the language, because years ago when I started doing some of this research, your book is one of the few that had the references to the language, and that's kind of what hit it home for me. But thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, brother, for your question.
Okay,
it's an abomination what these dictionaries. The more I've researched them, the more angry I become, because they meaning totally more than half the words in my dictionary. I have 11 pounds it weighs and 4,000 pages. None of those words are traced to Africa. Incredible. None of them. Most of the terms they trace back to, not most of them, about half of them, they trace back to Latin or Roman or Greek origins, and then nothing, man. And then you see what happens with these so-called Jews over there in Israel who are claiming this Holy Land, and most people don't even know what a Semite is. Very few biblicists, Bible supporters or readers really know what a Semite is. Semite means you're a descendant of Shem, who was Noah's second son. Are you kidding me? You believe that actually happened? That they had this flood, that he built this ark and the animals went in 2 by 2? Please, come on. Even when I was 3 years old, I didn't believe that stuff. Man, Bugs Bunny and all of those were better stories than what this was. And yet you got people going around here swearing by this. Oh, Jesus told me this, and oh, God, thank you, Lord. Oh, please. Man, get back to reality. Christianity is killing the planet. These people who believe it and push it are aliens because they are anti-nature. And the fact that they are anti-nature is the reason why now nature is coming back on them. And it's going to make life as we know it extinct rapidly from now on. That you just experienced the hottest year in history. I guarantee you next year is going to be worse. And it's going to keep continuing. The Mississippi is at the lowest level it's ever been. The Colorado is at the lowest level it's ever been. It's going to affect the food supplies and all of this. Simply because these white racist so-called supremacists have imposed their so-called click civilization on the world. And their civilization is anti-natural. Everything is artifice. Build the machine. Oh, well, we can build a better machine to take care of that problem. And on and on and on. They go until now, and they got these robots coming out to whereby they won't even need humans. That's how you get rid of the problem. Well, robot don't need no food. Robot don't need no water. Robot, man.
All right. Brother Hembrick, you there?
Hey, appreciate you, Jubal. I don't really have a lot of questions, just some comments. Those that are listening, there is at least one agnostic still on the planet. That's me.
Well, that makes two of us.
None of that Kool-Aid shit. I've been telling my group forever. I with a dirty straw. But anyway, just a few comments about Nazi Germany and what went on there, regarding, because I think somebody raised the question. Well, Hitler, and you were talking about the munition makers, and that's the name of the game. These so-called democratic societies cannot exist without war. That's just a fact. And Hitler used a lot of propaganda from the First World War, blaming it on the Jews that they wanted to make money, and kept the war going, keep making these munitions and stuff, and that's how they got their butt kicked. Okay. And then coming back on the Second World War, they used that propaganda against the Jews. I had a hell of a German history professor when I was in college. We ran it all down to, how they used to Nazify a town, a street.
Yeah.
We had it broke down to that level. And then the other brother asked about the protocols of the elders of Zion. I forget his name, who tuned in. In that book, it talks about how wherever the Zionists go, they intend to control certain institutions in society. Government, banking, law, medicine, all that stuff. Wherever they, mass media, transportation, the whole 9 yards. That's what they want to believe. That's what they want to do wherever they are. And the thing about the Palestinian thing, I feel for them, but we got our own business we need to be taking care of.
Yeah.
So-called Chinese and Russians in Africa is taking over the same damn way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're humans. But I'll get into that later, man. When you let them kill them, then they come to kill you. But go ahead, Rashid. Yeah, that's what the people say. You didn't say nothing when they were doing this, didn't say nothing when they were doing this, and then next thing you know, ain't nobody gonna say nothing when they come get you. Go ahead, Rashid.
Brother Chihuahua just wanted to, I guess he wanted to make a quick point. Go ahead, Brother Chihuahua.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's there. You on mute, Brother Chihuahua?
He may have stepped away. Man went to the restroom or something.
Okay. Well,
let me.
No, I was trying to unmute.
Okay, go ahead, Chihuahua.
Yeah, wow, man, this is powerful stuff, There's so much with these people and the thing that's going on in the world. But being a eunostic myself and not knowing that I was a eunostic, yes, and not knowing I was a eunostic until tonight. Now I have an actual term to put to what has been happening with me my whole 68 years of liberty on this planet. And it's quite interesting because I am driven consciously by Marcus Garvey, who said that the Black man would not know himself until his back is against the wall, you know, and that we need, you know, we have to be more proactive today. We have to be more concerned with a lot of times the solution to our situation. And I believe and I clearly feel that and know that once we are able to return to the Gnostic mindset, which is our highest mind consciousness, because we become one with our ancestors, which goes beyond the flesh manifestation of our bloodline. It goes deeper into the cosmic reality, to the galaxy, to creation itself and all of its assets and avenues. And once we unite on that level, we can physically change things without physically being engaged to the things that need to be changed. This is a very powerful truth, and it scares the rest of all human ethnicities on this planet. They are afraid of us to the fullest. So I just wanted to say, you know, I'm looking forward and I'm pleased to be here. The guest is a very honored individual. I learned quite a bit tonight, you know, about, I have not read the book, but my intention is to pick the book up as soon as possible and get into it to be enlightened a little further, you know, into my consciousness, you know. And so this is what I want to tell everybody. Let us all unite. Let us all unite in harmony. Let us all unite to do works, not simply to speak and to talk and to analyze what's going on in the world, although those things are important. We need to analyze those things. We need to process those things. We need to understand and get deeper understanding. So all those who do that, the authors and the historians and the people that commit their lives to bringing those clarity to light, we love them. And we will continue to love them. And we say, continue to work. And for those of us that vibrate on another level of vibration as myself, let us meet, let us brainstorm, let us talk, let us unite, let us act, let us do it. Let us free ourselves without fear. And we must be full of courage. You know, so that's what I wanted to say.
That's good, Brother Shawara. Brother Rashid,
Professor Rahh,
you guys go.
There was one point that I was planning on mentioning and I didn't get to. It won't take but a second. Okay. But there's a word you can look up, M-A-N-E-S, manes, which was the name for the personality that emanates from the physical body at death or transition or prior to birth. It was called the manes. In one phase, it was called the manes. The other phase was called the kares, K-A-R-E-S. So I urge all of you to look that up for this reason. The manes was the spirit of the deceased person who was wandering around Amenta in search of equilibrium, balance, which was necessary in order for it to be reconstituted into a new physical existence. So this whole idea of Amenta, which is the mind, is that with death, the personality is released from the body, of course, and it goes on, and it's called a manes, M-A-N-E-S. It's in search, in trying to pass through Amenta. Passing through Amenta, the mind, means finding equilibrium, because when you're born balance, in total balance. You know, everything is the same. You see in a circle and nothing is more or less than the other side, its opposite side. So you're in the center of the circle, therefore you're in balance. This life, when you live the physical life, can take or add to that personality. Everything you do, you experience, will either is going to affect your personality. So by the time you do transition into the spiritual realm, you may be out of balance. Most of us are. So then it's necessary to search for rebalance in a menta. And when you reach that point of rebalance, you enter what they call, what the Egyptians called the Hall of Truth and Judgment, whereby the personality or the manas is placed on the scale of equilibrium and balance. And in the opposite, the balance was the symbol of the feather. So if you could balance the feather, the truth, then at the end of that weighing, the Osiris who represents the sun, or in the dark realm, is handing the symbol. Where did I do the symbol of the Ankh to that deceased? Because the Ankh represented the resurrection, reconstitution, new life. So Manes. Then you had Hugh. Hugh, as I said, was you. I'll put it up there again for y'all to see. Then to coming. When you combine those two, the you or Hugh, or Jew if you want, with Manes, you come up with human. And this is what the term human, where it evolved from, humanity. It all evolved from the idea of the Gnosticism, whereby the coming spirit that was being born represented humanity. That's all I wanted to make that point. Wow. There's a lot more about it I could go on, but I realize your time is,
Wow.
The comments, brother Jubal. Now,
yes,
those things that you were just talking about, is that book?
Wow.
Black Revelations. There's a lot of that information in that book.
I did this. This is my research over the last 6 weeks. I had never. One of my biggest challenges was to find a definition for the term man and human. And once I got into Hugh and you and realized that this was what we believed in and what we were called, and that man, it was represented by the MANES. M means the mother, and the truth. They combine together. The reason is when any child is born, you see it emerging from the womb. So you know that she, in fact, is the mother, and it's the truth. You see? Or the father, well, who knows? But with the mother giving birth, it became the same word for the truth. That's why you see in Egypt the term mayat or ma, meaning truth, So it evolved from that. The N in there means of or belonging to the child. And the S and manes, I'm talking about, the S at the end means the seed or the child. So the mother and the child of that. And coming was represented by the term you or hue, so that you combine the two to get human. This is where the term comes from. That's its origin. Now, you look in the dictionaries, they don't give any origin or etymology for the term human. Are you kidding me? You call all people humanity,
Right.
and you can't say where the term came from? Because you avoid Africa, and you especially avoid Gnosticism, which is the opposite of Christianity. This is why they don't have they don't go to Africa. Africa destroys Christianity, dissects it, and shows it to be a fake, nothing, not even a good folk story. All of what was in place before these historians came along, it was already in place. They couldn't even invent new terminology. It was impossible. How do you invent a new term? They invented the word Hebrew, for example. What the hell does that mean? Where did it come from? What's its etymology? Look it up in the dictionary. They'll say it means across the river. Oh, what's it based on? Nothing. That means it has no etymology because it was an invented term long after the Nicene Council applied to the former Gnostics who, in order to save themselves and provide a genealogy for the fake Jesus story, they were allowed to continue as Hebrews, as Zionists. It's just the facts.
I was reading your book, Conspiracy of Silence, and a lot of the words that I didn't understand, I tried to look them up in the dictionary. They're not there.
Yeah.
Even Gnostic wasn't even in there hardly.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a conspiracy. Bro.
All of these terms, look, that I put up here, they all lead words in the English language and other European languages as well. Yet none of them appear, almost none of them, as any prepositions. Are you kidding me? Why not? Because if you list them as a preposition, you have to say what that preposition means. And then you have to explain where it comes from. So they just don't deal with it. None of these terms are listed in there. None of them. They'll list hue, hue, H-U-E, but not H-U. H-U-E means color. Who is that? Who is that? Color. That's us. Gnostics, Gnostics, people of color. Literally, that's what the term means or meant. And the meaning, the religion of these people of color was nature, in all its various terminology that you use for it. But that's what it was originally meant to be. So that's why when you look in these European dictionaries, Oxford's, Webster's, any of them, they more than half the words, I'd never sit around to count them, but I'm estimating that more than half those terms are not even traced to Greek in Rome. And when they are, there's still no etymology that bottoms it out.
Mute, Professor Rahh. On mute. Professor
You're on mute, Rahh.
On mute.
I just want to say, Brother Jubal, we ain't gonna keep you up all night, brother. I mean, you hype and it's beautiful, man. But you know, because it was just a beautiful experience, man. Here you laid the things out that you did because you know this European had really got
Asian.
God people, and many, you know, right in Africa, they're pushing Christianity so hard. I've had friends that go to Africa. That's all they got is Christian movement over there now, and it creates the issues that you say with regards to our understanding of life and reality, and they have flipped that to many of the leaders. And the other thing is this genocide. Here is Biden saying he's a Catholic, he's a Christian, and he's killing people. Sending bombs. Israel would not exist if Israel was just another state, another part of the United States.
Yes.
That's all it is.
It's a military base.
That's it. That's it. A military base. And then, you know, you're watching them kill babies, cut off water, cut off electricity.
Everything.
Don't even let the hospitals get oil done. Lying and lying. Never, and you know, like DX said, you know, they liars. You know what I mean? You know, they got tunnels up under the hospital.
Yeah.
That ain't no justification for you to kill 10,000 people.
Thank you.
You understand? You can't just say, oh, they terrorists.
Anti-Semitic.
The babies, the 4,000, the 5,000 babies The baby
Yeah.
on the incubator is a terrorist.
Yeah.
Yeah, to them, because they believe in that practice, kill all babies, like in the biblical story. Leroy, go after the boy babies, go after the babies because they're gonna grow up. The people fighting in Israel today are not they're not from the Yasser Arafat era. These are kids that grew up in oppression. And where there's oppression, there's gonna be resistance. You understand? And I don't care what they say. These people have been fighting over 75 years, throwing rocks, and they won't even show the reality of what the blockades. Before y'all came on, Jubal was talking about the blockades in Venezuela and all that. That's why these people's coming over here. They won't let food in. They won't let jobs in. I mean, and then they say they're shocked that the people want to come here. So they can give cheap labor. You know, ask Schwarzenegger, he gave one of them a baby, cleaning up his house. You know, so it's a strong story. But you can't just sit and let them bomb people, kill people, and don't speak. Or I just want to praise the people that's out demonstrating, and I'm going to praise all the people that's criticizing. Israel got its way. You can't criticize it. Could you imagine that? Somebody saying you can't criticize me. If you criticize me, you're a hater, you're a terrorist, and we're gonna punish you. You ain't gonna get a job when you get out of school. We're gonna make a list. We're gonna fire you. You understand? I mean that
yeah, it's extreme.
Continues.
But it shows their true colors, doesn't it? Their true lack of color, really.
Oh man, lack of humanity.
Lack of what is humanity?
They don't have none. They don't have none. They wouldn't be destroying humanity.
Well,
if
there wouldn't be a word called humanity if it wasn't talking about color.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. You know, these people are really caught up in the fact that they lack color. They literally, if this earth was invaded by aliens, they couldn't do no worse than what these white mutations are doing to the earth. Seriously, look at their history. Look at them. And most of the killing and destruction that we're witnessing is in the last 200 years since they found out they can burn oil. And man, they've been inventing this machine and that machine and this bomb and this rocket and this, you know, and they keep going on and on and on and on. And at the same time, they claim to be Christian. And
why God helping you? Why you You understand? I mean, I got a bunch of issues, but I'll talk to you personally about that, man, because we got to let you get some rest, brother. And Roger, who we got Wednesday?
Oh, we got Dr. Charles Alexander. Now, Professor JIE wanted to say something. Can we just say, go ahead.
Oh, I did want to say something earlier, and I first off, I just want to say this: the brother Chihuahua. Okay, when he was speaking, it spoke to me, and I wanted to just comment that what I hear you saying, and what I hear from this whole entire lecture is that this is really spiritual warfare. That there's an element of that there, and I remember reading something from Dr. Remember Ani saying the same exact thing, that this was spiritual warfare.
Religious warfare, religion. There ain't nothing but gangs in secret society. You can't be a Muslim unless you accept Allah as the last messenger for God. You can't be a Jew unless you accept Abraham and the Abrahamic faith. And you can't be a Christian unless you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You can be a better Christian than a Christian, but they will not call you a Christian unless you join, be baptized, pay your dues, all that stuff. And then you don't know what's going on. They always go in the back room and count the money and whatever they're going to do. But the point is that they're all secret society, you know, and they fight each other for a flock, for other members, and you know, I mean, the contradictions are amazing. Here, the Pope ain't said nothing. You ain't heard him say nothing about the slaughtering of those people because they're racist.
Mhm.
They didn't say the Pope was around when we was in the Holocaust of enslavement. You
Mhm.
understand? He had to
No.
apologize for the Catholic Church role in it. You understand? So it's the contradictions is all you do is searching. But go ahead, Brother Rashid.
Yeah, so we have Dr. Charles Alexander coming on, and the title is Internal Displacement and Historical Trauma. So on Wednesday.
What's a historical what?
Historical trauma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Charles, tell me who he is, Rashid.
He's a licensed clinical psychologist.
Out of where?
Out of Chicago.
And he'll be on this Wednesday.
Yes.
Hopefully y'all can tune in and get some more of this info. We deeply appreciate everybody that's on. We wish all of you blessings without numbers, all good things without end. And we pray that your families will be prosperous in health, have prosperity and good health and spirit, and stay strong for all your families. But hey, we're here every Tuesday. This was a special presentation because we had some technical problems with tomorrow issues. So, but we generally here on Tuesdays at 6 and on Wednesdays at 6. All right. So y'all welcome. And Brother Sharara, we want to get you on, brother. We want to hear some of your research also, brother. You sound real good.
He is scheduled the first week of January.
Oh, that's a long ways. We need to get him on sooner than that.
Okay, well, we could talk about it, Professor.
All right then. All right, Jubal, I'll give you a call, man. Thanks for everything.
Okay.
Man.
Oh,
Thanks
you
for sharing
having
your
me.
wealth of knowledge, brother. And I know you don't do nothing but study. They don't understand, read, and do that. And we need that, brother. That's a good weapon, education. That's the key. All right, then.
I appreciate you having me. I really do.
All right, this will be on YouTube. Huh?
Each one teach one.